Game developers and publishers. When I say that, you will most likely think of Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft, and many more mainstream developers or publishers. The real question is, who are the biggest and how did they get there? Here's a small background story in the top 5 biggest developers and publishers. Michel Guillemot is the founder of Gameloft. Michel also co-founded Ubisoft in the 80s. Gameloft was founded in 2000. In the late 90s, Michel Guillemot had figured out that the mobile industry was going to offer a lot. Michel wanted to be a part of this evolution of the game industry and had set up Gameloft with his 4 brothers, having expectations to produce quality games that the consumer could easily download through their mobile phones. By 2003, Gameloft had published over 100 mobile games, making the company a profitable state. In 2004, Gameloft had developed their first installment of the Asphalt franchise, which is still a well-known series till this day. In 2006, the variety in genre had expanded to whatever the consumer wanted to play. From sports to action to schooling and even arcade games, Gameloft had it all. Right now, you could say that Gameloft is the biggest publishers and game developers in the mobile industry. There's most likely a chance that you have a game on your phone that has been developed or published by Gameloft. Ubisoft was founded by the 5 Guillemot brothers in 1986. On the early stages, their company got publishing deals with companies like Electronic Arts, Sierra Online, LucasArts, and exclusive rights to distribute their art in France. Ubisoft, their first development game, was called Zombie. It was released on the Amstrad CPC in 1986 and on the Commodore 64, Amiga, IBM PC, and ZX Spectrum in 1990. After the 90s, Ubisoft had expanded over the States, Germany, and the United Kingdom. They had also built 2 development studios in France and 1 in Romania. In 1995, the company developed and published Rayman for the Atari Jaguar, Sega Saturn, and Sony PlayStation. Rayman became the best-selling PlayStation title of all time in the UK. In 2011, Ubisoft was the 3rd most valuable and independent video game publisher in the world. To this day, Ubisoft still has one of the most famous franchises, which are Rayman, Assassin's Creed, Tom Clancy series, and many more. EA Games has a reputation that they buy developers and according to fans, they ruin their games. But that doesn't mean that they are not one of the biggest developers and publishers out there. Trip Hawkins, the founder of Electronic Arts, left Apple Computers in 1982 to start a company that was focused on the designers of the games. People had said that video games are going to be a has-been, and Trip Hawkins wanted to prove them wrong. EA would not actually develop anything and would seek out for retailers and let them develop their game so EA could publish it. But in 1987, EA decided to make their own game anyway, Skate or Die. Even to this day, a very well-known game. In 1990, EA wanted to publish games on the Sega Genesis, but they didn't really care what the cartridges looked like and just made their own weird cartridges compared to the original ones. Around this time, EA also found a goldmine, one of the most simple ideas but at the same time very hard to come up with. They bought celebrity licenses to combine with sports so they could sell the same game every year with small updates, and yeah, who would buy it? That's right, we would. And we still do. In 1991, Trip Hawkins left EA and left it in Larry Propt's hands to work on the 3DO, which had gone bankrupt in 2003. Trip Hawkins still remains the chair of the EA board. In 1992, EA had bought Origin and started buying more developing companies over the years. From 1992 to this day, EA had bought company names such as Bullfrog, Maxis, Westwood Studios, DreamWorks Interactive, Studio Blacks, and the list goes on. You can say that EA Games is one of the biggest publishers and developers in the world right now. We all know who Bill Gates is. Microsoft was founded in 1975 by Bill Gates and Paul Allen. In the run of the 80s and 90s, DOS had developed into something really big and dominated the computer industry. In 1982, Microsoft was incorporated, and the following year, Windows was shown to the world for the first time. Microsoft had published their first game in 1990 and followed up with many more games after 1993. In the late 90s, Microsoft had published series that are still very promising games to this day. When Microsoft really started to dominate the game industry was when they came out with the Xbox. Since Microsoft had one of the best marketing powers in the world, they could easily push out their console and sell it. The only thing was that the Xbox was going to be part of the next-gen gaming consoles. In 2001, Microsoft had published Halo Combat Evolved, which was developed by Bungie, and also one of their best-selling franchises. Atari programmers David Crane, Larry Kaplan, Alan Miller, and Bob Whitehead were developing games for the Atari 2600 in 1979. Sadly, these programmers thought that the people who had worked on Atari games would not get enough credit for the games that would do well. Crane, Miller, and Whitehead had left Atari and founded Activision in 1979. They were the first independent game developers and distributors of video games for gaming consoles. Later on, Kaplan would join their team. Unlike Atari, Activision would give credit and promote the game creators along with the games themselves, causing a big growth in the industry. Activision also let hardcore gamers send in high scores to receive embroidery and patches. They had an idea that you would be active and behind the television, so they combined the two words to create Activision. The first proposal to their company name was V-Sync. In 1982, Activision had released Pitfall, a best-selling title on the Atari 2600. This game was developed and designed by David Crane. Due to its success, many clones were introduced, not just on the Atari, but also in arcades. In 1988, Activision started to do more than just making video games to expand their company. They had changed the corporate's name to Mediagenic. Activision would continue making video games for various platforms. In 1989, Activision had published the first-person perspective MechWarrior game. It was based on the fastest pen and pencil game, BattleTag. But in 1992, Mediagenic had changed their name back to Activision due to bankruptcy. From this point on, Activision was only going to focus on video games. From 1997 until 2006, Activision had several acquisitions and partnerships with companies such as Raven Software, Marvel Entertainment, Disney Interactive, LucasArts, Infinity Ward, Sega, Reticle Entertainment, Victor's Visions, and many more. In 2007, Activision had merged with Blizzard, the developer and publishers of the biggest online MMORPG at the time, which was World of Warcraft. From this point on, you could say it was almost impossible for Activision to go bankrupt again. They're most likely the biggest gaming development and publishing video game company out there. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you learned something from it, and I'll see you guys next time. Like what I do and want to support me or the channel, make sure you hit that like, share, and subscribe button, and don't forget to check out my other channel.